Welcome. We're delighted to welcome you today to the 2015 Resolve Awards ceremony. My name is Peggy Clark. I'm Vice President of the Aspen Institute and Executive Director of Aspen Global Health and Development. And it's my great honor and privilege to welcome you here today. This is a wonderful event. Many people say it's their favorite thing during the WHA week, where we are able to celebrate countries who've made progress in increasing access to reproductive health services. So we really gather here to celebrate one thing: champions. And the champions who are our awardees this year, as many of you know, have overcome really seemingly insurmountable odds and opposition. And they've managed to put reproductive health at the forefront of their nation's priorities through a lot of hard work and struggle over the years. As we all know, in most countries, access to reproductive health is not central to a nation's priorities, and resources to support it are really hard won. They're often not supported by the finance ministry. Presidents and vice presidents often don't see it as critical. Yet, the ability of families to choose how many and when to have children is absolutely fundamental and central to every other Millennium Development Goal. Food security, national health, child health, maternal health, economic progress, all really hinge on the ability of families to make choices about their own resources. And many of you know this, but it's important for us to say we're really at a tipping point. We're really at a tipping point today. Many of the world's nations that are at the crossroads in food security and climate change are also at a crossroads demographically. The largest cohort of young people today, ever in history, is making choices about family size that really will determine the fate of the nations that they're from. So that is why we gather here together to celebrate incredible country leaders who have really pushed this issue forward and managed to make real progress. And as I look around the room today, I'm so delighted and deeply grateful for so many people and many partners who have worked tirelessly to make the resolve possible for these countries to do the work that they do. I know that a lot of you have very busy weeks and there are many competing demands, and we are so grateful that you've come here to celebrate our honorees. We're also delighted to be back at the U.S. mission. This is a place where we've held the Resolve ceremony for the last several years, and we're delighted, Ambassador Hamamoto, that you have welcomed us back to your home. We have had a lot of really wonderful, fun parties here in the past, and we are just honored to be back here again. In so many ways, the United States has lit the way for all of this work that we're celebrating today. And we're really, really very honored that you've graced us with your presence. So without any further ado, it's my honor to welcome Her Excellency Pamela Hamamoto, who will give opening remarks. Ambassador.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the U.S. mission and extend my thanks for your attending this important event tonight, especially in light of, I know how busy your schedules have all been this week. And I'm feeling a little pressure now that Peggy has said that she's been to a lot of great parties here over the past few years, so I hope I can live up to that expectation going forward. But I did also want to thank the Aspen Institute, and especially to Peggy Clark, for organizing this event and for her leadership in international family planning and reproductive health. It's an honor to be here to celebrate the progress Senegal, the Philippines, and Uruguay have made to improve access to reproductive health services. As we approach the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals, it's vital that we maintain robust commitment and action for reproductive health as the SDGs move forward in the coming year. Family planning is vitally important because it saves lives. It improves health, and it empowers women. A USAID analysis found that by preventing closely spaced births, family planning could prevent up to 30% of maternal deaths and up to 25% of child deaths each year. As the countries we are honoring today have shown, investing in people is not only the right thing to do, it also makes for a more prosperous nation. Increasing access to family planning and reproductive health is a gateway to achieving a host of sustainable development goals and plays a catalytic role in advancing economic development. Family planning can reduce the economic burden on poor families and allow women more time to work outside the home, which leads to increased family income. And with more income, families can invest more in health care, more nutritious food, and better education for each child. Families can also invest in their own livelihoods, thereby breaking the cycle of poverty. For nations, a larger workforce with fewer children to support translates into increased savings on health care and other social services, increased investments in each child, increased output and productivity. This demographic dividend can raise GDP by as much as 2% per year for many years. Many countries have done so in the past. African countries, if they act now to implement programs that support women's and couples' desire to plan and space their pregnancies and to enact supporting education and labor policies with attention to equity, can set themselves on a similar course. 225 million women want to delay or avoid pregnancy, but are not using modern methods of contraception. No one sector can solve this problem alone. This is why partnerships with the public and private sectors, donors, and civil society are essential. And I'm particularly proud of a new initiative recently launched by the U.S. mission called The Future She Deserves, because it is built around this recognized need to build partnerships and to work collaboratively in order to really drive results. The fundamental goal of The Future She Deserves is to leverage this unique platform of Geneva-based institutional mechanisms and multilateral fora to protect and empower women, and thereby enhancing their ability to fulfill their promise, both as individuals and as equal members of society. In the health context, it is difficult for young people to fulfill their promise due to the many obstacles they encounter to using available health services, such as lack of knowledge about sexuality and reproductive health, lack of access to better services because of location, cost, hours of service, unfriendly and judgmental providers, communities that are not supportive of young people's sexuality and use of services, and unequal gender norms. The consequences of this are severe. 16 million girls aged 15 to 19 and 2 million girls under the age of 15 give birth each year. Girls aged 10 to 14 are 5 times more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth than women aged 20 to 24. And young women aged 15 to 19 are twice as likely to die. And children born to adolescent mothers are much less likely to make it to their 5th birthday. One of The Future She Deserves' key priorities is to ensure adolescent girls have access to the full range of appropriate health services. And it is for this reason that we are so excited to host this event tonight, as it directly supports our initiative and our goal of recognizing innovations and scalable interventions that will significantly improve lives. So congratulations, Senegal, the Philippines, and Uruguay for your incredible progress. And I'm so honored to be able to play just a small role in this special ceremony to recognize your great accomplishments. Let's hope we can all learn from the examples you have set to improve access for reproductive health for women and girls around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Hamamoto. We're really delighted that you have shared your remarks with us, and your deep commitment to girls is really wonderful. So we're eager to see how that works out. Before further ado, I'm able to introduce a wonderful and dedicated leader, a friend of mine, Dr. Ariel Pablo Mendes, who is the Assistant Administrator and Head of Global Health at USAID. I have been the great beneficiary of Dr. Mendes's energy for many years, and he almost always completely transforms whatever it is he's working on, as he has with the issue of universal access to healthcare, as he has with this issue and so many others. He's the true example of a public servant. And in many ways, he embodies the kind of leader that we're also celebrating today in these awards. I just want to give you a few little bits about the Resolve Award and the awardees. As many of you know, we've been doing this for several years. It's quite a competitive process, and the theme for this year was human rights and the rights-based approaches to reproductive health. And as many of you know, this is not possible without leadership from the public sector and from governments. As one of the nominators for Senegal this year said, there can be no partnership without commitment from the government. The foundational key to success was and is the Ministry of Health's commitment to family planning and reproductive health. And in the Philippines, interestingly, and we're so delighted to have you with us, Senator, political leadership came from the authors of the country's new reproductive health law, who spent 13 years trying to get it passed through Congress. It has come up as a nominee every single year for the Resolve Award, and we are really incredibly delighted that you have finally achieved this year, and we can celebrate you. As we know, you didn't do this alone. You were supported by a broad movement of national advocates, and it became bigger and bigger the longer the law was delayed. In Uruguay, the impetus to end maternal deaths came from health professionals, came from doctors and nurses, and with the government providing crucial enabling support early on. In each of these success stories, this has been a real common effort and campaign from civil society, from government, from professionals, from others. And a common motivating factor has always been one of the desire to see women's rights enabled, respected, and upheld. One of the nominators for the Philippines law explained how the country's reproductive health law was really inspired by the integrated rights-based healthcare approach that first emerged from the Cairo and Beijing conferences in the 1990s. And the crux of the matter, as the nominator said, was women's capacity to decide for themselves the number of children they want to have. And the Philippine law also makes a special point of ensuring that everyone will have access to care, even the most poor and vulnerable. In Senegal, this was really an incredible story of addressing weakness in the supply chain and addressing the stockouts of contraceptive products. As one of the nominators said, without products, health and family planning programs were unable to succeed, and women were left empty-handed. It successfully undertook a major revamp of its system and has seen remarkable progress since then. The nominator from Uruguay explained how the country's model to end maternal deaths from unsafe abortion has strengthened the relationship between health professionals and women. The women see us as a trusted partner now, she said. We are supporting human rights and women's rights with healthcare. Our role is to enable decisions. We are the guarantors of that right. And congratulations to you, Ambassador. We know how difficult this work has been. So our winners tonight are all inspiring change, showing that it is possible. So often we come here to the World Health Assembly and we sit through meetings where we talk about how dire the situation is. Tonight this is different. We've seen real progress and people who are really fighting to make change. And so, as I think I've told you, one of my personal champions is Dr. Ariel Pablo Mendes, Assistant Administrator for Global Health and Coordinator for Maternal and Child Health with the U.S. Agency for International Development. Oops, that's all right, sorry. Siri's here. She wants to make statements about the awardees. Ariel, we are really all honored to be a part of the work that you champion. This has always been central to everything that you've done, and we are both personally and professionally delighted that you're here with us today and that you will offer some remarks tonight. Thank you, Ariel.
Well, thank you, and good evening, and it's really a pleasure to celebrate with you all and honor the 2015 Resolve Award recipients. And thank you, Peggy, for not only the kind introduction, but also for your own leadership on this in shaping up this platform, which has become now a great, great annual event. And I want to thank you also, Ambassador Hamamoto, not only for your remarks and your leadership in this, but also I want to acknowledge your leadership in the Ebola response last summer. You were new as an ambassador here, but there was confusion in the summer. But there was no confusion here. You were reorganizing with many partners, with WHO, and it was in the early days. I was quite involved also from Washington, as many of you have. And it was really great to see that leadership here, convening others, and before there was any clarity. And so thank you for that. And we have been successful. We feel very proud and honored of the support we have provided with many of our partners to the governments of Liberia, Guinea, and Sierra Leone. And also thank you and the U.S. mission for hosting this event. It's becoming like a very nice tradition. The Ambassador Betty King got going also, and the British ambassador joined us in the interim, and we're very happy to have you on board with such a noble cause. And we are celebrating tonight the remarkable achievements of Senegal, the Philippines, and the work of Uruguay to improve overall access to reproductive health. I met the senator 3 years ago. She was fighting at the time for the legislation in 2012 when we had our call to action in Washington, and she told me it was just a few months later that she got through. And of course, like many other parliaments and Congress, you have to go through a lot of things before it's done, but it's now done, and it's an incredible accomplishment. Likewise, Minister Awa Kolsek from Senegal was in Washington also recently sharing the success and the experience, almost tripling access to contraceptives in the country in a very short amount of time, which shows what political will can be. And we will listen to their accomplishments, and we still have many challenges, but we want to celebrate not only progress, but also those who are leading, the champions, because it's a struggle often to advance in this area. Population reproductive health is a very old commitment in the U.S. government and the U.S. Agency for International Development. In fact, it is the oldest piece of the Bureau of Global Health. The first piece was devoted to family planning and reproductive health. And it has remained a top priority for the agency and for the U.S. government. During the Obama administration, our budgets in support of reproductive health and family planning has been consistently increasing with the support of the U.S. Congress to support the partner countries. Recently, the Ouagadougou Partnership was established precisely to support those countries that had not received enough attention in Western Africa, and with the French government and many others, locally, Mali and others, to bring about really transformation there. And Senegal has been a great leader in that space in the region. And more recently also the Family Planning 2020, an initiative with the Melinda Gates in particular, actually, and with the British government, with UNFPA and with many others, to reach by 2020 120 million more women who need access and who have an unmet demand, which will be just over half of the need we have today. So there's been a lot of progress, a lot of movement here, and as Peggy noted, we are reaching a tipping point, and we are, I believe, entering a new era in the post-2015. It does mark a change in that new era. We do have the demographic transition, and so a youth bulge coming in around the world, particularly in Africa, and still at the same time the success of the Millennium Development Goals has meant that in the last 20 years over 100 million children's lives have been spared, and we can now see the end of preventable child and maternal death in a generation. We will do this, and we will help spare another 100 million children's lives to do so. At the same time, the success in international development has seen an economic transition, in health. Many of the countries whose economies were imploding in the 90s are now growing at the fastest rate in the world. And with that, health expenditure is growing, demand is growing, and that brings many new opportunities in the world of development, with domestic resource mobilization becoming a central part of the post-2015 development agenda. As the ambassador noted, family planning and reproductive health is so important for so many reasons. It does contribute to saving lives, and for the U.S. government, ending preventable child and maternal death is one of our top global health priorities, and so family planning is important for that, but it's important for many more reasons, of course. It is key to what we call the demographic dividend. that smaller families and population base that is less dependent, when women begin to join the workforce, you begin to add almost 2% in the GDP compounded annually over 20 or 30 years, and has been part of the wind lifting the economies in Latin America, in Asia, in many places, and of course now happening also in Africa. We begin to see Africa's also benefiting from this demographic dividend. But finally, it's also because it empowers women. If you can imagine 100 years ago, a young girl marrying at 13 or 14, and then when life expectancy was only 40, they will be pregnant 1 year, breastfeeding the next, pregnant the following, and then by the time they ended with 10 years, they were already about to die. There was no life. In family planning, the ability to start, plan, space your birth empowers women and empowers families and empowers communities, empowers nations. And so we think that's so important, in addition, again, to the contribution of family planning to ending preventable child and maternal death. This economic transition has also inviting many new possibilities. I mentioned the Family Planning 2020 initiative earlier, which, as Chris Elias reminded us, is not a financing facility, but is really galvanizing energy and engaging countries to do more. But we had a great session today at the Palais on the global financing facility. If the country's economies are beginning to grow, and you can see the projections of the growth already, it would be nice if we could borrow from the future to save lives today. And the global financing facility will help us do that. It is also the case that half the sectors in Africa and Asia are private. So we need to learn to leverage a private capital in support of ending preventable child maternal death, in support of family planning. There are many, many ideas in Family Planning 2020. For example, we all partnered to do market shaping by virtue of pledging to double market size for implantable contraceptives. Companies were willing to give us 50% discount, so it all worked out very nicely. So ideas like that, we have to have more and more. The Global Financing Facility that will be launched at the Addis Conference on Financing for Development is bringing together many partners, the governments of Norway, the governments of Canada, Japan, the United States, and others, together with many of the UN agencies and the UN Secretary General, under the umbrella of the Every Woman, Every Child, to begin to leverage the country's needs and willingness to borrow IDA as those countries can, to begin to supplement overseas development assistance dollars in a way that with what is called the IDA loans and other related concessionary loans, half of which is like a gift and half is the countries begin to really own. So it's a nice transition way for many countries who can do more for their own in going forward. And in that sense, we believe that it will be very important that we all remain very creative. And I think that one of the things that the reproductive health community was very vocal early on in the design of the Global Financing Facility to ensure that as we started with maternal child health, maternal neonatal child health, we had reproductive, maternal, neonatal child, and adolescent health. And I cannot drop any of those letters. This is building on efforts that the World Bank was already doing with performance-based financing, where about a third, 30% of the funds were already devoted to reproductive health, which is very good. We want to do more of that. And the Global Financing Facility will help us do that with many of the priority countries. So we believe family planning is essential for sustainable development, but we also believe it deserves all of our support, our investment, and it's a fundamental right of people around the world. We are very happy to see again the progress and to honor the champions that we have here with us tonight. We look forward to continue to work with all of you with Family Planning 2020 partnerships and to make sure that we end up closing the unmet need for family planning and access to reproductive health around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ariel. Your remarks are always so inspiring. Now it's my honor to introduce Kate Gilmore. She is also a force for change. She's the Deputy Executive Director of the United Nations Population Fund. Kate, please join us.
Thank you, Peggy, and great appreciation to the Aspen Institute and its Global Leaders Council for Reproductive Health. Deep appreciation of WHO and the Department of Reproductive Health and Research, a treasured partner to the permanent mission of the United States. Esteemed champions, dear colleagues, and Siri. You know, it's been rightly said, I think, that were the MDGs to be children, they all are of questionable parentage. But some were truly orphaned. Of those MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, Orphan 5.B, universal access to reproductive health, is both the youngest, it's a mere 7 years old, as compared to its teenage siblings, and it's the product of a troubled and obstructed labour, delivered late into the MDG era. It is, in that sense, the most neglected. It's the most intimate, but also the most contested of the promises made to the world. Difficult to explain why. Almost impossible, I would say, to defend, because as the evidence of the 20-year review of the Cairo Programme of Action confirmed, comprehensive sexuality education, access to contraception, safe abortion services, prevention and treatment of sexually transmitted infections, programs that address gender-based violence and promote gender equality. These are high return investments. They're life-saving. Interventions of remarkable cost effectiveness. They're essential to human security and foundational for human dignity. United States President Kennedy said, "Victory has many fathers and defeat is an orphan." MDG 5B is a victory orphan, and its failure has many fathers. Which is why wherever we can, wherever we are, we must pause to truly celebrate, whenever we have due cause to do so, those who bend toxic trends, those who've stood out for their success in delivery of 5B because they stood up for Millennium Development Goal 5B, those who have mothered success where others would have fathered failure. Ensuring reliable warehouse to my house, unbroken supply of quality contraceptive choices. Underpinning reproductive health with legislative backbone, eliminating the distortions of such as providers' personal preferences by ensuring, first and foremost, the choices are upheld for women and children and for young people. Removing the stigma and life-threatening risk of abortion by the very surest route, which is legalising it and making it safe. Senegal, Uruguay, and the Philippines are trend benders, promoting positive, life-enhancing deviations from toxic policy norms that have harmed, disabled, and undermined the dignity of women and girls. Globally, it seems we're in an era of deficits. Deficits are evident across so many currencies, only some of which are monetary in nature. Amongst the most troubling of those deficits, it seems, at least to some, is a deficit in courageous leadership. You know, having studied its opposite, which is greatness in leadership, John Kenneth Galbraith considered the key characteristic of a great leader is the willingness to confront unequivocally the major anxieties of people in their time. Leadership of a nervous people, now that's courageous business. And few issues more perversely incite such anxiety as the idea that the body of a woman be a site not for domination, containment and control, but for autonomy, for agency, and for self-determination. Awarding tribute to, celebrating publicly those who have exercised compassionate courage and leadership where savage neglect is more often found, That's an act worthy of this assembly. It's most deserving of celebration and surely most in need of global emulation. Congratulations.
Kate, that's so beautiful. I'm so glad that so many others who have joined us on live stream are benefiting from the wonderful remarks of our three colleagues this morning. Thank you, Ambassador Hamamoto, Dr. Pablo Mendes, and Kate Gilmore, for reminding us why we're all here today and why we keep up this struggle. I would like now to ask the 2015 Resolve Award recipients, and if we could all give them a round of applause, to take a seat on the stage and call Dr. Marlene Temmerman, Director with WHO's Department of Reproductive Health, to present the awards. Dr. Marlene Temmerman is the Director of WHO's Department of Reproductive Health. Her mighty, small but mighty department has been partnering with us on these awards for 5 years, and we're delighted to have you co-hosting again this year. Thank you, Marlene.
Thank you very much, Peggy, Your Excellency, Ambassador, distinguished excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good friends, a very good evening, bonsoir, buenas tardes. It's a real pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you today on behalf of WHO Department of Reproductive Health and Research and the Global Leader Council for Reproductive Health, and to recognize the extraordinary accomplishments of the 2015 Resolve Award recipients. The selection was difficult. We have many nominations, and there is a jury out there who has to make the selection, but basically it was not that difficult, because the three of you are really above. I mean, you are real champions, and you have heard already why you have been selected, and I will repeat this again. Because, as was said already by Ariel and by Kate, reproductive health, and including access to family planning, is a real cornerstone to good health. It is absolutely fundamental to women's health and women's rights. And it is fundamental to the health and the strength of families, children, and communities. And it is fundamental to the sustainability and the prosperity of entire communities. And against the backdrop of the World Health Assembly, where global leaders are here with the single purpose of improving health systems in the world poorest countries, let us remember women's reproductive health and rights, and let us remember how critical and how fundamental it is. We know this, we see it all around the world, and it's what inspires us, all of us, daily. It's why we are here right now. Reproductive health is not a luxury. It is not an extra something that we will maybe think of after we have considered all the other health aspects. It is basic. And a world where every woman, every girl has access to the tools and the information she needs to make decisions about her life, her family, and her future will be a healthier world. Now, the recipients of the 2015 Resolve Award are each champions. Each of them are exceptional advocates for the rights and the health of women. And they, ladies and gentlemen, they have accomplished remarkable things in challenging circumstances. They have embraced new partners in a variety of sectors. They are, all of them, committed to not doing business as usual. They have dedicated efforts and resources to finding effective ways to reach the underserved populations. And they have worked tirelessly to shift attitudes, to shift this way of thinking, and to mobilize political will, which is so important. And perhaps most importantly, they have engaged directly women and girls to empower them and to empower them to make decisions about their lives. So each of our award winners today is helping to enable and to uphold the rights for women and girls in these countries. And this means investing in programs that honor the rights of individuals to decide freely and for themselves whether and when they want to have children and how many children they want. It means respecting the agency of women and girls and empower them with full information about contraceptives, family planning, universal access to services and supplies, and a wide range of choices. Now, the Global Leader Council for Reproductive Health gives the Resolve Award to the government of each recipient country. But it is important to note that these achievements are not the work of only governments. They are accomplished through partnerships, through working together with governments, civil society, donors, partners, parliaments. But governments, however, they have an essential ingredient: leadership. Leadership. And as the members of the Global Leader Council know very well, leadership is critical. And it's critical to advance the changes that we all need. And this year's Resolve Award winners are recognized for outstanding achievements in two areas. The first area is policy development, and the second one, service delivery. That's how we select our candidates. Please join me in applauding our Resolve Award winners, the Philippines and Senegal, and our special mention recipient, Uruguay. And, excuse me, the 2015 Resolve Award for Policy Development goes to the Philippines. The Philippines Responsible Parenthood and Reproductive Health Act was signed into law in 2012. And I remember very well, because at that time I was a parliamentarian myself. I was a senator in the Belgian parliament and working with my colleague Pia to fight. They have been fighting 13 years to get to this act, and it was upheld as a constitutional in 2014. Congratulations. It represents the successful culmination of 13 years campaigning to establish a national framework for reproductive health and rights. And this is a landmark, a new law that means that for the first time, the rights to reproductive health, the rights to family planning, including all forms of contraception, is guaranteed for all adults in the Philippines. Receiving the award today is Senator Pia Cayetano, co-author and sponsor of the bill. So congratulations. Shall I give it to her? This one. Just checking. Yes. the second award, the 2015 Resolve Award for Service Delivery, goes to Senegal. And Senegal is revolutionizing the availability and the supply of contraceptives with its informed push model of distribution. I remember very well, I'm an obstetrician myself, and years ago, 40 years ago, I did my first elective in Dakar, in the Pekin project. And at that time, it was really difficult. I mean, one of the major problems was the supplies. There was access to contraception and to family planning, but the supply was always a problem. So women came and they had to come back again and again and again. And now what the push model has done is a big collaboration and has now reduced the stock out from about 80% in the earlier years and has reduced it to 10%. So congratulations for that. And receiving the award today is His Excellency Bassirou Seni, the permanent representative of the mission here of Senegal to the United Nations office. Bon. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I forgot. Normally the guests are saying a word, but I'm going to invite them after the third special mention, because the 2015 Resolve Award special mention goes to Uruguay for a sharp reduction in maternal mortality. And the approach expanded access to post-abortion care, including providing counseling and access to family planning. And doing so, Uruguay has reached an MCPR, modern contraceptive prevalence rate, of 75%. So receiving this award today is His Excellency Ricardo González Arenas, permanent representative of Uruguay to the UN office and other organizations, international organizations in Geneva. Congratulations, felicidades. So now we have to come back. Senator, may I please invite you to the stage?
Good afternoon. It is with much pleasure that I accept this award on behalf of the Filipinos, particularly the Filipinos who worked so hard for this for decades. I picture them in my mind because I could not do the work I did in the Senate without them. The journey of reproductive health has been long and difficult. I can speak from experience in the 10 years I've been in the Senate. When it first came to my plate as chairman of the Committee on Health, I plunged into it despite the objection of all my political advisors, all my political friends, that I would never have a second term, that it would be disaster for a politician to even begin to entertain the thought of defending the reproductive health bill. I started the process, but I was not able to finish the job in my first term because I realized my seatmate was one of the first and original proponents, being a former Secretary of Health, and he advised me that until we have a president that would support it, all my efforts would be in vain, and I might as well focus on a lot of other health issues we had. So I started the ball rolling. My idea being is start building awareness, but I could not agenda it on the Senate floor. Fast forward a few years later, the opportunity came again because we had a new president. And as many of the speakers before me had said, you really need an alignment of forces from all over, within government, parliament, not just the ministry, but the president himself. Ironically, it was a male president who supported this and not the previous female president. So equipped with political support, because the president at least was not anti-reproductive health, I started the process, and I have to say that it has been the most difficult task I have ever done in my political life. The most difficult, but at the same time, the most meaningful and the sweetest victory. And that is why I always jokingly say, but I still say it and I mean it, that is why I am an endurance athlete, because I really seriously dug deep and thought that if I can finish a 4-hour marathon, that if I can do a triathlon, then I can do this. And so I stood, we don't sit, we stand when we defend the bill. I stood through many hours of, sad to say, sometimes ridiculous debates, because many of my male colleagues made statements such as, well, I don't believe women die when they're giving birth. In my province, no woman died. Why is it when they go to the hospitals, they now die? They don't die in my province. Or more men die at sea than women die at childbirth. I had to sit through this and look like I can answer this without fainting, without breaking parliamentary rules and calling people names, which in fact, ironically, I was called, and which is why it was not personally difficult for me, but my inspiration really was, at that time I had 2 adolescent girls, and I looked at them and I said, these girls have futures. I would go around the country and meet teenage girls in hospitals who were on their second pregnancy, and their lives compared to my children would never be the same. And I thought I was such a great parliamentarian when one of the many typhoons that struck the Philippines, when it was happening, I came up with what I thought was such a brilliant solution to have a different kit for pregnant mothers or lactating mothers, because I said, I know how it feels to be a lactating mother. You need more food, you need more water. So I had all the lactating mothers, pregnant mothers, line up separately so that they had a food bag that had more water and more protein. And as we were giving out the bags, I would chat very briefly with each one. And one of my standard questions were, how many kids do you have? And I knew the answer wouldn't be 2 or 3. No way in the Philippines. I figured the answer would be 5 or 6. And I was stunned that every other woman said like 9 or 10. And I realized, I already knew that, but in my face, I realized that all the developmental policies that we had were practically meaningless if women were left behind. And if women are left behind, their children are left behind as well. So that is what drove me every single day to get back out there and defend this bill, which finally passed, and there was dancing on the streets. And I actually took the pleasure of crossing town, actually 2 days before the Senate version passed, and sitting in the gallery waiting for the lower house to pass the measure. Well, we didn't know if it would pass, but I had my fingers crossed, and it did, and that's one of the highlights of my life. Because I couldn't watch myself, so I had to watch what was happening in the lower house. And so we won, only to find out a few months later that we would be in the Supreme Court. And then that's when I was like, so that's why I became a lawyer, because then my one and only opportunity to defend a case before the Supreme Court, you have to be a lawyer to do that. So I had the opportunity to do that and defend the reproductive health law before the Supreme Court. But amazingly, all these unbelievable statements that were made on the Senate floor were also made in the Supreme Court. And because I'm a lawyer, I have to be careful with what I say, but either it was ignorant or it was some of their statements were clouded by their personal and religious beliefs, but I just couldn't believe the kind of statements that came out of there. Having said that, though, they unanimously voted to uphold the reproductive health law, save for some provisions which should be subject to another discussion. But over and above, they unanimously held it to be constitutional, and so here we are today with our own set of implementation issues, but the fact remains that we have a law that we are proud of. The challenges remain. On a personal note, my term comes to an end in about a year, and I will continue to be advocating for reproductive health, for women's rights, young girls' rights, outside of the halls of Congress with my colleagues in Congress to ensure that no one touches this law. And then trying to make it work, trying it to be more, workable and doable and meaningful to the lives of more women and families. So on that note, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you on behalf of all the women and men who have worked to make this a possibility. I am just one part of that. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a champion. Wow, congratulations. Well done. And the fight goes on, of course. You still have, we need your leadership, your championship. I also was, not as a lawyer, but as a medical doctor, standing trial a long time ago in my country. And in the Supreme Court, I was told that I had no reason at all to do an abortion on a 30-year-old mentally retarded girl, 14 years old, because the Mother Maria, the Holy Virgin, was also 14 when she got her child. So that is another reason. Absolutely. So it is, and only 20 years ago. So now it's my pleasure to invite l'ambassadeur. La parole est à vous.
Je vous remercie infiniment. J'imagine qu'en me voyant en tant qu'ambassadeur représentant permanent du Sénégal ici, dans cette grande maison des États-Unis d'Amérique, du président Obama, recevant un prix aussi prestigieux, vous percevez combien je suis fier et heureux. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, let me express my warmest and friendly thanks to the U.S. Permanent Representative in Geneva, my dear colleague, Ambassador Pamela Amamoto, for the hospitality and for hosting this important event, to which I'm accompanied by the head of the National Parliament Health Commission, Madam Awecha, here sitting, former minister, and by the Director General of Health, as well as staff members of the Senegalese mission. I'm pleased to deliver the message of friendship, brotherhood, and strong support from Madam Awa Marie Coll Seck, Minister of Health and Social Welfare of Senegal, who had to return back to Dakar yesterday due to a heavy governmental agenda. She asked me to present her regrets and express to all of you her words of sincere thanks. Let me, on her behalf, congratulate the Global Leaders Council for Health Reproductive and the Aspen Institute for their significant contribution in the area of sexual and reproductive health, and to reaffirm the commitment of the government of Senegal to continue its efforts to achieve a quality delivery health care for its population, in particular for women and children. Ladies and gentlemen, the population issue are at the heart of the development agenda of Senegal, my country, which is still facing difficulties and challenges in the response to social needs. That is why our health program is an essential component of the National Development Strategy established by His Excellency President Macky Sall through his so-called Plan Senegal Emergent, PSE. The main objective of the governmental policy is to improve the level and the quality of life and to ensure the well-being for all the categories of population, taking into account the gender balance. In this regard, since years, Senegal has initiated a number of strategies, national and sectoral development programs, which were implemented in close cooperation with local stakeholders and international partners. These continuous efforts have contributed a lot to the achievement of the main MDGs targets related to child mortality and to considerable results on maternal mortality, even if there is a need to improve performances for MDGs 5. I want to emphasize here that the government of Senegal has played a crucial role by taking major political measures to strengthen the maternal, newborn, and child health and to reduce their mortality. Among others, these measures are related to the following: free access to cesareans, free access to HIV screening and treatment by antiretrovirals, free universal health care for the 0 to 5 years old children, vaccine subsidies, anti-tetanic, BCG, oral polio, hepatitis, training and recruitment of thousands of qualified midwives. Ladies and gentlemen, before concluding, I must say how proud and honored I am to receive on behalf of Senegal the 2015 Resolve Awards, which we see as an important incentive symbol to persevere. Finally, let me say that the issue of mother and child survival are indeed inseparable. Combating maternal and neonatal mortality must be considered nowadays as a social and economic investment that is vital in order to make pregnancy period of safe and happy event for all the women and their families. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Félicitations, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Can I now invite the Ambassador of Uruguay? You have the floor.
Muchas gracias. Buenas noches a todos. Es un honor para mí representar Uruguay en esta ceremonia. I'd like to very much thank the Aspen Institute and also the Mission of United States here in Geneva for organizing this ceremony. I'm very pleased to be here to receive this award on behalf of my country and also to share with you some comments on these important, I should say, essential issues. Uruguay is very honored by this special mention award of such a prestigious institution. Let me express the gratitude of Uruguayan government on behalf of the Minister of Public Health, Dr. Jorge Basso, who unfortunately is not able to join us today. Uruguay has gradually introduced since 2004 measures to provide access to sexual and reproductive health services by including a gender and a human rights perspective to our health policies. Evidence of what today constitutes a public policy continues to inspire us. Uruguay has greatly reduced maternal mortality, achieving the Millennium Development Goal 5. Uruguay is being honored with a special mention for a sharp reduction in maternal deaths. Our approach expanded access to post-abortion care, including providing counseling and access to family planning. Building on a model based on a risk reduction approach to unsafe abortion, priority Uruguay was given to increasing access to family planning information and services, prevention, confidentiality, and especially comprehensive counseling. This approach has improved women's health and ability to make informed decisions about planning their families, empowering women to make their own informed decisions by providing a space of reflection with the advice of a multidisciplinary team of professionals providing pre- and post-abortion care within a comprehensive healthcare approach has proven effective in preventing risky behavior to women's health. As a result, no maternal deaths from unsafe abortion have been recorded in Uruguay since 2008. We are encouraged by the application of this Uruguayan model in other countries of the world. In 2012, Uruguay approved legislation that provides that the state must guarantee the right to a conscious and a responsible procreation, recognize the social value of motherhood, the procreation of human life, and also ensure the full exercise of sexual and reproductive rights of the whole population. Finally, allow me to thank once again to Aspen Institute for this award in recognition of the endeavor made by my country in order to improve universal access to sexual and reproductive health services. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have made tremendous important progress on the long journey to build this world, and our task now is to make sure that this topic, reproductive health, the 5B, stays on the agenda in the post-2015 era, that it doesn't get pushed aside, and that we continue to build on our incredibly promising work thus far. Everything is in place to succeed. From the people here tonight in the room and our winners on the stage, we can see that we have built effective global and local partnerships and a framework that empowers countries to champion their own progress. We have built new partnerships and we have revitalized old ones. We have forced innovative collaborations across sectors, and we have saved already thousands of lives and empowered millions of girls and women. The momentum is here, we have to grab it. Together we can achieve this vision of the future we all share, a world in which every woman and every girl has the right to lead a healthy life and to decide freely without coercion, and for herself whether and when to have children. Thank you so much for everything. Thanks all of you. Thanks to the US Mission for hosting us. A very good evening.